Introducing Minor Wisdom Quintet.
1, 2, a skidadidadoo.
Minor Wisdom.
This week I've got Gary Cooper on from the University of Houston. A lot of you have seen Gary Cooper at most of the conventions over the past few years recruiting. He's pretty much the head of recruiting. He's always got students with him from the University of Houston. Gary is one of those people, again, that I've been wanting to get on for quite a while. A highly respected individual in the collegiate world. And in my opinion, it's just my opinion, one of the reasons that University of Houston has been doing so well recently with its bachelor's program. And the reason I say that, and I will be frank about it, is because when I was there, as with everything, you think that when you're there, the best of the best are coming out at that time. And so that's truly how I felt at that time with Kelly Harkins, Bernardo Cabrera, Rollo, Matt Lusk, who's now down here teaching. Jessica Boone, just Kevin Holden, all these types of people, although Kevin Holden was a master's guy, whatever, he still counts. But all these people were there, and we were just having a hell of a good time. And then the master's program actually started taking over. And I don't want to say that the bachelor's program necessarily suffered, but when Doc Berger left the University of Houston program, the bachelor's program did take a little bit of a hit. It just took a change, a growth period. And then here comes Jackie DeMontmollin growing that master's program and doing all those amazing things with the educators program, the summer educators program. And so I think some of the bachelor stuff got put on the back burner, intentionally or not. And then here comes Gary Cooper to sort of save the day with his big red, I guess, G or C on his chest. And now the bachelor's program is, I highly recommend it now. Whereas when I was first started at Dulles High School, I didn't. So now it's highly recommended that students go there. They're selective. You know, when I went there, they weren't selective. They just took almost everybody. But and then it became selective, and I think they were selecting the wrong people, in my opinion, again. So I'm going to stop digging myself into a University of Houston hole, but I do have to praise the work of one Gary Cooper. So I hope you enjoy this. I will say this. We are both monotone dudes, so you might want to double the speed up on this one because it'll make us sound like this. So anyway, but enjoy this one. It's really fun. He and I are similar creatures because we're both theater people that enjoy ourselves some sports. So that was kind of fun to talk about with him as well. One little quick story that I wanted to tell from this past week. We were still home. We were still quote unquote quarantined. I think I've now said quote unquote a couple times, but we were quarantined this past week. We're going back face to face Monday. I don't think we should. We should probably all be out till spring break, but again, just my opinion. But anyway, I had a student finally. I haven't had any issues online. I don't have a lot of kids with their cameras on, but all of a sudden, this one student who has never turned his camera on, normally a face to face student, has his camera pop on, and what do I see but that student smoking a doobie. And, I quickly told that student to turn their camera off and not thinking like, oh, I should probably grab a screenshot or see if other students have saw what I saw so that we can have eyewitnesses. And I just quickly said, turn your camera off. Well, I contact one of the assistant principals, and then we end up having a parent-teacher conference. And the kid, of course, says, oh, it was a rolled tobacco. And if you're a fan of Friday, you know that probably wasn't a cigarette. It was cigaweed, and his mom bought it, and he sold a bill of goods, and turns out he's a pretty darn good actor. So I might put him in the next show, but that's beside the point. So anyway, this kid got away with it, and I started to think about it. We're allowed to tell a kid that we can count them absent when they're not on camera, but when they're on camera smoking a joint, nothing happens. So, and that's just kind of the nature of what we're in right now. Because what am I supposed to do? Show up to his house and say, give me that roach, buddy, and let me sniff it and take a hit myself and see if it is what I think it is. So that was that was one of my stories from this week. So anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. I in 2 weeks I get my second shot of the vaccine. I know quite a few people are starting to get it. I know also that there are quite a few people that are having trouble getting it, and I also know that there are quite a few people going to Florida. Finally, Florida is good for something, but a lot of people are going to Florida because they don't care who you are. As long as you're a human being, they're going to shoot you in the arm. You don't need to be tiered. So I know a lot of people have been going to Florida. So finally, Florida man pays off. Well, I hope you guys are, again, having a good beginning to February. It's almost February. As this drops, it'll still be January, but have a good February. Enjoy the Royal Rumble tonight if you're listening on Sunday. Yeah, my pick for the winner. Ooh, my pick for the winner this year. Someone said John Cena is going to come back and win. I don't think so, but even if he did, we wouldn't see it. So, yeah. Enjoy this week's interview with the University of Houston's own, go Cougs, whose house? Cougs' house? Gary Cooper.
So I kind of got involved in theater very young. I grew up in several different places. We moved a lot, but I grew up in Arlington, Irving, the Dallas DFW area, and did plays within our elementary that our music teacher did. So I kind of was exposed to theater that way. But then when I was in 6th grade, we moved out of DFW into a very tiny town called Milford, Texas, which has maybe a population of 700 people. My dad had grown up there. His whole family, brothers and sisters, had all grown up there. And my grandmother was, aging, and he wanted to move, close to her to help take care of her. So we moved to this tiny town, which allowed me, it was a good experience. It allowed me to do a lot of different things: football, basketball, baseball, all the athletic things that you're going to do in a small town. But what was funny is my sophomore year, a new Baptist preacher moved into the town, and his wife had her theater degree, and so she decided to start teaching at our school. So she taught English, but then she was also able to create a theater class, and we had never really done one-act play, and she needed guys for a play that she wanted to do, the one-act play that year. And so she actually came to a football practice and said, "Hey guys, I need guys." And so a couple of us, mainly the underclassmen, said, "Well, that sounds interesting." And so we joined, and that's kind of where my theater life took off. Is she was a great mentor, a great teacher, is still in contact with her today. And really my entire class really jumped in, and we had a lot of success in When I Play. And whereas that school had never had any success in When I Play, let alone do any other play besides When I Play, we began doing 3 plays a year, 2 in the fall and the When I Play. And so I decided from everything that she did that I really thought that that's where I wanted to give back as well. I always knew that I wanted to do something in service and education. It sounded like a good route, and because theater became such a big part of my life. And I originally thought I was going to go to UT. I had everything set to go there, but we had borrowed costumes from a smaller school, Tarleton State University. And my teacher, knowing that I had only really experienced small school, that UT would be pretty large for me, said, "Hey, you should come with me when I return these costumes to Tarleton and check it out. It's a great little school." And so I went, and I immediately fell in love with that school, and that's where I ended up going. And I was going to get a BFA in theater, and spend a lot of time getting all the hours I needed for that. But then towards the very end, when I started the education part, they're like, "Oh, you can't," and then I don't know if this was all schools at the time, but at that school, they said, you can't get just a theater certification. You have to get another certification. So I immediately I had a lot of English hours. So I ended up getting an English degree, as well. And so that I could get my certification in theater. And then from there, and then I got married during that time. It was a music major, Diana, and actually she was a double major, science and music. And so when I finished, she wanted to go on and pursue her master's in piano performance and pedagogy. And so she thought she was going to go to Baylor. So I looked for a job, my first teaching job somewhere around Waco, and found it in a little town called McGregor, which was just outside of Waco. I taught English and theater there. And then all of a sudden, Texas Tech offered her a full ride, whereas Baylor didn't. So she moved up to Lubbock, and then I followed, and got a job up there, and taught theater and English up there as well. And my first two jobs were both very small schools, 3A, and both 3A schools, in the old 3A. And then when she finished up, we moved to the Houston area. I was looking for a full theater time job rather than splitting English and theater. Really difficult to grade all the essays and try to keep the production schedule that I was trying to do. And so I was lucky enough to have a friend that had graduated from Tarleton as well, and he was the tech director at Klein Forest High School. And he had called me and said, "Hey, there's an opening here for an assistant position." And I applied and started teaching there. I taught there for a couple of years, got to direct a lot of shows, and really learned how to be more of a director. I mean, I had those opportunities to direct on my own in the smaller schools, but at the scale that a then 5A, but now 6A school could do with 4 theater directors, it was really a great 3 years of learning experience to put on large scale productions, and at the talent level, that I was able to work with at that time. After that, after my 3rd year there, Margaret Valenta, who was at Klein Oak, she was Margaret Larker at that time, had decided she wanted to become a principal. And so her position, to head the program at Klein Oak came open. And so I applied and transferred over there, and worked with that program for a couple of years, which, ironically, that school had gotten so large that 2 years in, they had built Klein Collins High School, and they transferred half of Klein Oak over not just the students, but also the teachers over to Klein Collins. And since I was last one in, so I got to move over to Klein Collins, which at first I was like, I didn't want to move because I had just moved to Klein Oak and I didn't want to hop from job to job. But it ended up being a great experience because I got to build a program from the ground up. That I didn't realize how much work went into building, a program from the ground up. You don't realize how much your seniors and juniors can really do for you, and especially if you have what I believe as a student-centered program, and that's the way I always ran my programs. When you only have freshmen and sophomore, and that's how Klein Collins started, they can't drive and they have no prior experience whatsoever. So it really felt like for the first year, maybe that I kind of was teaching an extended junior high. But then, we got a lot of kids with experience, and had a lot of success in that program for a number of years. And after building that program, I was like, I think I'm interested in moving to administration. And I know you've talked about I think you got your degree there as well, in administration. And I thought for a while I wanted to be an AP. I got the degree, and then I was like, I really don't think I want to be an AP. The major reason is I was working with great students as a theater teacher. And then I knew that as an AP, I'd be working with, that 10% that were in your office all the time, rather than the 90% that you really enjoyed working with. Um, and so Klein Forest head position came open again. Because well, I skipped something. I moved to a junior high in Tomball ISD while I was getting my master's, so that I wouldn't have the after school responsibilities that I had at the high school, or as many. I still did shows there. And then I was tired of junior high after 2 years, because that takes a very special person. And although I liked them, I knew that was not my area. And a Klein Forest position came back open, for the head position. And so I moved over there and spent a few years. And then that was the end of my high school and, K through 12 experience. Was that my next stop was Lone Star, in Tomball. I did Lone Star College and they had just built a new performing arts center there. And I came in as the manager and the technical director for the theater program there, and got to work with a really good friend that I had taught her daughter at Klein Oak, Sherry White. And she and I had, a few years of great time. And then I met Jackie DeMont Millen, and Jackie was at UH at the time. I hired her to come in to be a clinician for a One Act Play clinic that we were hosting, at Lone Star. And then she basically kind of recruited me to come over and be her assistant as in the theater education program, at UH. And so that's kind of my background of how I got to be, in the position I am now. Whereas a couple years into that, Jackie got offered a position as the fine arts director at Denton ISD. And they basically said, okay, you're in charge of the program now. And oh, by the way, you need to do recruiting as well, because that's what Jackie did as well. So so I jumped head in on that as well.
What was the biggest challenge for you to get into the college level education world, and like, was there did you have a confidence struggle at first, or like did you think you were worthy? Did you I know it's a different world, a different sea.
It really is, and it's interesting to me because it's not anything that I ever thought, as a high school student, or even, when I was in undergrad, that I would ever teach it. That was never something that I thought, oh, that's my end goal, is to be, at the university level. Luckily, going into Lone Star first, as that experience with higher ed was not as, I don't want to say demanding, but it wasn't as intimidating as changing, from the high school level to the college level. A lot of those students at the junior college level need a lot of extra attention. They still, need that family feel that you have at the high school level. And so I was still being able to serve that purpose. It was fun though. It was great to be able to teach one class. That's all I had to teach, because my main job was managing the Performing Arts Center.
Right.
And just get to build shows and hire students to come in and build the shows and work through. So that was a great experience and transition. Now, I will say, going from Lone Star to UH, there was a big transition. It was kind of strange to me to think that there was no one telling me what exactly needed to go in my syllabus for the classes. And so that was very strange. There was no evaluator to come in and evaluate my classes. It was just, here's the title of your course and go teach it. And in fact, what was interesting and difficult that first semester for me at UH was that two of the classes that I was teaching didn't exist. I mean, they were never taught before. Jackie basically had created them. And so I was really, had free will to arrange them any way
Right.
that I wanted to. One thing that's been kind of strange is in just having classes with 21-year-olds, 24-year-olds, rather than 16 to 18 or 15 to 18-year-olds, has been a big transition
Right.
in that they will really have conversations with you at a much higher level, especially the seniors. Most of my courses are senior level courses, and engage in the conversations a lot deeper than a 15-year-old will.
Right.
And so that's been, and sometimes it's very challenging. I not that I ever tried to be a person who knew everything at the high school level, but they really looked at you to
Yeah.
know everything about your content area. And so sometimes it's like, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
To a 24-year-old that's asking me, you know, what about this? Or how do you handle this? But it's yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
I do like UH. I do like the program that I really bought into it. That's one when thought it was unique that Jackie created an integrated theater education program. My experience, with my certification was theater, stop theater, and then take my education classes, and then student teaching
Yeah.
and go on. And so the fact that I had never really even worked with students until I was a senior my last semester, and that's the only semester I got to work with students and really be in a classroom, is so different
Right.
than the way Jackie built this program and created this program. And so I love it. I love being able to work with future educators.
Right. And
I
that
don't know if that answers your
No, it
question or
did.
not.
Yeah, it did. But it leads me to another one because the in the world of college, you mentioned 21 to 24-year-olds, but also, and I know you're not like the head of the summer program, but I know you have a lot to do with the summer program as well. And I know the summer program, and as well as I guess I don't want to call it the normal program, but the fall and spring semesters also include this. But you have a lot of experienced, um, mature, I'm trying not to say old, but you have a lot of students that have been in schools and in classrooms for 20, 30 years. Some, and then you have some that have been in it for 20, 30 months, all within that same cohort. Is there a part of you that relies on your students to help students, or is that part of, do you mediate conversations rather than necessarily act as the professor in the classroom, or do you have to figure out like where that balance comes from? Does that make sense, as far as?
Yeah, but well, to clarify, I really don't have any connection to the summer MA
Okay.
program.
Okay.
That's really uh, Jessica's program now,
Right.
and she brings in some of the other professors. I think Rob Shimko and a few
Right.
of the professors come in to teach specific classes, but I don't. During the summer, my main responsibility is recruiting at National Thespians,
Okay.
and then running what was the Houston Shakespeare Festival Conservatory.
Right.
We changed it this last year, well, the year before COVID, to Cougar Actor Training Camp. So it wasn't specifically connected with the Shakespeare Festival
Right.
any longer. But yeah, so I don't have really any interaction with those students that are in the MA program, except that a lot of them are also teachers that I interact with on a
Gotcha.
different level, not within the program.
As a recruiting mechanism
Yeah.
or so.
Yeah,
Okay.
recruiting and as student teacher, mentor teachers and things like that, especially if they're in the Houston area.
Okay.
I interact with a lot of those teachers that way, but not within the MA program.
Right. Okay. Within your bachelor's program, what is it that you have kind of taken and adjusted and edited? And I'm sure there are quite a few answers to this, that that Jackie started getting the ball rolling, and then when she went off to North Texas, you took and sort of made your own. Is there something that you've kind of manipulated or molded into being having the Gary Cooper stamp on it rather than and less of a Jackie DeMontmollin stamp?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I think one thing that I can think of right off the top of my head is that I did rework when some of the classes were offered to, I think that would work better. The junior year was such a killer year for our theater ed students that I just reworked that so that it was more easily able to be handled by those, those students. And then we've added, we realized that we were not getting the opportunity to work with a junior high level student very much. We have all these programs that were established, like we have a partnership with HISD Elementary School Land Trip, where our students go every Friday afternoon and teach theater concepts throughout the year. And so we were getting experience with elementary students, and then there's a lot of interaction that I have. Like I have a stage design for theater educators course, and I often connect that class with a high school somewhere to come in and either help create a light plot, or was it last year? I guess it was last fall before COVID. We worked with Porter High School and they were doing Cinderella, and so my students designed their set and lights, and then one of my students even acted as the visiting technical director for them. But so there were high school opportunities and elementary opportunities, but no junior high opportunities for our students to really work with. And so we have a senior internship where every theater ed student will get the opportunity to write a proposal of something that they would like to either present or to do, that either they want to explore more or they think that they have knowledge in that they want to share with all the other theater eds in a presentation. And one of our seniors this year, Branson Cobb, said he wanted his internship to be a junior high theater troupe. And so I was like, this is a great opportunity. I want this to happen because that gives the opportunity, the theater eds, the opportunity to work with junior high students that they didn't get that opportunity before. So he created this great proposal and I approved it, and they worked with another HISD school that didn't have a theater program. And that was the other thing. I was like, if we're going to work with junior high, I don't want to impede on a junior high theater teacher or teachers that are already there. So we need to look for a school that it does not have it, or they have a fine arts. Some of the HISD schools, junior highs will have fine arts courses rather than specific theater or music courses. Yeah. And I said, look for that. And so he found one, and so we implemented that. So the only thing I think we're not getting right now is EC, that early childhood section, because the certification that they get is EC through 12. Right. And that's my next step this next year. After really talking with the College of Education this year, I realized that we need to add that in as well. So we'll have a component that I'm going to add this next year to get that. And I have a question.
Well, I was going to speaking on the EC part, because I've been teaching for a while. My wife, collectively, my wife and I have almost 25 years together, which I know is, there's some people that scoff at that. They're like, only 25, but the EC part is a whole different beast, as far, because and I've never been outside of high school, and eventually one day I'll do the college thing, because that's ultimately where I wanted to go from day one. But my wife has been doing middle school and used to do high school, and we will have conversations about how completely different those two worlds are, and and most people agree. But then the EC part, watching my 8-year-old who has been forced to be in theater. I mean, that she doesn't have an option because she has 2 theater parents, but she's embraced it since. But watching her go through kind of the EC world when she was doing that, now she's in 3rd grade.
as a theater kid that knew about theater, it it was still a struggle for her, and it's you know it's weird to see the lack of understanding from I guess it goes back to what you initially said, kind of your upbringing with an English teacher doing the one act play, or bringing in a person that's not necessarily, they just like theater, they know that it involves acting and some lights and stuff, but they don't really know it. Is it really, it's I don't know where I'm going with this question. It's kind of more of a passionate diatribe on my end, but because I feel like there's a big lack of understanding in that early childhood world for fine arts, not just theater, but also just fine arts, in how to get these kids interested. So what does UH do? What is your plan? You don't have to disclose, show me the pages of notes you might have, but what is the plan to kind of get that introduced and be effective and lasting?
Yeah, and it's difficult because if you look not just EC, but elementary K through 5, really 6
Yeah.
as well. But if you look at report cards, you'll see a theater arts on there, and they'll get an ESU and whatever it is. It's a letter grade like that. But there's no theater specialist on probably 90% of the elementaries in the state of Texas. And I think that the grade is already there. The ability to have the grade there, the theater teaks are there. And so if we can get more specialists in there, that's always hard because you have art, music, and PE, which are usually your specials at the elementary level. But if we can add the theater specialist in there as well, to make that a valid grade on their report cards, and I think it's really important because I think theater arts at that level teaches confidence, speaking ability, communication, collaboration, creativity, all those things that we know theater already does. But they're sponges at that age, and if they can absorb that, then not only will they have an appreciation for theater, but I think it will help in their accelerate their learning as well. And so my goal is I talk to a lot of fine arts directors about theater specialists at that age group. Is there a way to make that happen? And some of the HISD have those specialists. Keller ISD is another one up in the Fort Worth area, that with Kim Bland up there as the fine arts director, really doing some good things with adding those theater specialists that can come in. And if we can add more theater specialists at that area, I have students right now that that's where they want to be.
Yeah.
They want to be elementary
Yep.
theater teachers rather than high school theater teachers. And they just need fine arts directors and I guess administrators, superintendents, whoever makes those decisions on the positions that are available to be placed in the schools to make the commitment to adding those.
Yeah.
Our ability to go out and do partnerships with HISD right now and create a theater troupe at the elementary level, and then also present workshops at Thespians and TXETA when we're able to, and junior thespians that talk about elementary education. And I often have my seniors create proposals for those kind of workshops that since they have experience teaching those kind of clubs, they can go in and talk about the benefits of teaching theater at that level. And so I think getting the word out like that through my students, and also me really advocating with the fine arts directors, will hopefully start to take place. I know it all comes down to the number of teachers you can have and the budget that the campus has, but some of the school districts are figuring it out and doing it, and I think that they could use those as models to do it as well.
Yeah, and sometimes that teacher has to also do something else. Like are you good at, we know you're good at theater, but also I might need you to be the National Honor Society sponsor, or I don't think that exists in elementary, but you know what I mean? They have to fill some other roles, but yeah, so it makes sense. Now I've got to ask you a hard hitting question now, and you can answer this, or you can say, Blake, shut your mouth. But when I was at UH, and before I was at UH, when I was at HSPVA, even before that, and I know this existed when you were in the Klein district, um, the children's theater element at UH. And again, this is getting very niche because some people are like, who cares about UH? I'm a Longhorn. But the children's theater element at UH used to be such a large summer portion of kind of the production stuff. I don't want to say it ran hand in hand with Shakespeare because they were two completely different elements, but a lot of those same actors, they did the children's shows and then they would go to rehearsals later that day for, Shakespeare. But the children's theater was kind of, I think, mostly financially speaking, was kind of put to the side, and I could be wrong about that. But is that something that you could see coming back in some shape, maybe not even during the summer, that helps grow an EC through 6 type of program or understanding for administrators that, again, I know today in the COVID era, it can't, but in a year or so, when we can do field trips again and show the importance of theater for these kids. And, I remember as a kid going to theater and that was oh my gosh, this is so cool. That doesn't exist as much anymore at a university. Main Street Theater does a youth stuff. 80 Players does some, I know there's some places that do that, but on the university level to say, look, even in this educational setting, we're putting our best foot forward to create these programs, and here's what can come of those programs. Is that something that's even, and again, you don't have to answer that, or you can answer it however you'd please, but because I know there's probably some other red tape that you have to go through, but is that something you could see coming back at some point, or in some form or fashion?
Well, I have to be honest. I obviously wasn't there when the children's theater
Right,
program
but you
was
were in
happening,
Houston.
so I
Is
don't
what
know.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about how it worked, other than
Yeah.
I assume it had professional or semi-professional
Yeah.
actors that were doing children's theater, and you were busing in young
Yes.
students
Campers,
to
that kind of
watch
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I got from it, and my understanding is that they wanted to shift that to allow the BFA students and the grad students to do a children oriented play during the year
Yeah.
rather than during the summer, and then they kind of shifted to the young people series or
Right.
something like that during the year, and that they the educational component of the summer became the conservatory from that.
Gotcha.
Now, the conservatory was problematic in that it was very beneficial for the students, but they were also supposed to come in and be a part of the production, the 2 productions at HSF, and they would only come in at the very last week.
Right.
And so, whoever's directing, Jack or whoever was directing, would have to try to figure out how to place them within the shows. And so, so that's why that has also gone away. So those are 2 programs that were kind of student related or children's related in some way, that haven't worked out for whatever reason.
Right.
And I think that the children's theater that you're speaking of worked well, but when the administration transitioned, their priorities changed. My conversations with Dr. Shimko, the director of the school, and some of the others have been, I'd really love to bring back a production-oriented camp in the summer, but potentially not have professional actors, but have high school actors, sort of like some of the other camps that you see around the state, to also connect with high schools, and to bring in some of our professors and the local guest artists from around the Houston area to come in and help direct and or teach aspects on the tech side and on the acting side. And our building is finally, we had major damaged in the hurricane, and our main theater's been shut down for almost 2 years
Right.
now. And so it finally opened back up, although we haven't been able to use it
And then
because COVID.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hurricane
And
Corona.
so
Yeah.
so I think it's, it's in a better position now to be able to host other things,
Right.
that kind of thing, in the summer with the summer camp, or one act play contests, on our campus, things like that, that I think I want to try to do to connect us more
Right.
to the K through 12 level. I think that's one thing that we've tried to do, and are still trying to do, and will still continue to do in the future, is to connect with fine arts. We have a lot of really talented professors, but they're very focused on the undergrad and graduate level, and just trying to connect with the at least the high school the students and teachers, to show what we can offer here, and also at the same time, not only how they can connect with us and benefit us, but also how we can benefit them. And so there are some things that we're talking through. Just got to figure out how to finance it and so forth.
So enough about UH. I know you could probably talk about UH forever because it's part of your job. But I see, and I made reference to this before I started recording, but the pictures on the back wall, and maybe the answer is not in one of those pictures, but I got to ask, what is your most proud show production that you did as a or middle school, but a high school or middle school educator or director? Or maybe you don't just have one.
That is a difficult question. I think one of my favorite shows, well, okay, I'll start with When I Play, since so many, high school teachers understand When I Play.
Yeah.
And although I value When I Play, and now I act as a contest manager and an adjudicator, and highly supported part of Total and so forth, it was never my focus. We did 6 to 10 shows a year, so it was one of the other shows, but I valued it because the fact that we got to work with so many clinicians, and professionals that would come in and get to work with the students. I thought that was a huge learning experience and growth for our students, and just the camaraderie of a tight-knit group that traveled together, experience in traveling a show and so forth. So, but one of my favorites in When I Play was the Shadow Box, that I just had such a great group of students that year that just really bought into that show, and it was such a powerful experience for all of us, and I remember taking it to a clinic with Dr. Lucian Douglas from UT, and him talking about how it had impacted him, and that was in before the competition stage, when we actually started competing, and so it made me very proud, that we had done that kind of work. And in fact, he did the show next year because he liked it so much at UT. And then my favorite main stage show of all time was Moon Over Buffalo.
Okay.
That was another really special cast, and we submitted it for Texas Thespians and were chosen to present it when we were still in Corpus.
Okay.
So down in Corpus, when it was down in Corpus, and then we were selected to go on to present it at Nationals.
Oh, wow.
That year. We performed it up there as well. And it's there were some scene changes that were really important, and so we had a limited number of people at both state, backstage, and at state and national. So me and the other theater director would be back there to help a little bit. And I remember sitting backstage at state, and the audience laughing so loudly and so often. I had never, ever experienced a show that affected an audience. And of course, you have thousands of theater students in the audience, so they're hanging on everything that happens in those shows. So but gosh, it was such a great experience. It almost made me cry backstage, because I was like, man, those kids are just living it up, the ones that were on stage and backstage, because how proud they were of how well it was received. And then when we went to nationals, they were basically celebrities, after they did the show the whole time. And so it was just a really fun, and it's just a fun show. I mean, I don't know if you've ever done it or seen
I
it,
haven't.
but
I've
it's
seen
just
it.
a
Yeah.
great show.
Yeah. That's
And
funny.
what was the most,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the most challenging things, of course, is that we transported a full set,
Yeah.
for that. And so we, almost like When I Play, we practiced the setup and strike of that full set, and then had to ship it up there in an 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
And then what was funny is we got to perform it twice at nationals. So we were on the main stage in Nebraska, which I forget the name of it, but we were on the main stage that morning and performed it midday. And then we struck it and wheeled it down the hall to the smaller theater, set it back up, and performed it again that night. And so by about 12 or 1, I can't remember, when we finally got everything struck that night, we were exhausted, but really exhilarated.
What did you take away from that? I've heard, so, I've worked both main stages, because Nicole Morgan kind of runs both of those, or she doesn't run the Texas one anymore. That's more of a Jackie Beck, but up in Bloomington, I don't know how it's going to work, but in Nebraska, she sort of ran that stuff. So I wasn't with her during your production, but I got to hang out with her two summers in a row, and I videoed what they were doing, what these kids were doing, and I took it back to my students that following school year and said, this is why these kids have made it here. This is why, look at what they're doing. And they had note cards, and they had strings with note cards on them. Just tell them, step 1, 2, they were all quarterbacks pretty much, with their wristbands and cheat sheets and stuff. And what did you take away from that experience that sort of helped you on campus, not necessarily trying to get back to that spot, but that helped you, like, oh, we should be doing this at home for our productions on the regular?
I think it's I don't know. That's a good question. I know the organization of it was important. And I always allowed my students to help in the design process. Like I said earlier, I was very student centered, but that show was so much more student centered than almost any show that I'd done before, that I think that I gave over a lot of design responsibility and to my students after that, because they really worked with me in helping design every aspect of that in each venue, because we were performing it in our home venue, and this was at Klein Collins High School.
4 different theaters,
our
right?
home venue. Then going to Corpus, and then going to Nebraska, and it were the 2 theaters there. And so they really had to be a part of every single, okay, how does it change for here, 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 here? And an interesting, kind of embarrassing but funny story is that we were all looking at the ground plans at the 2 different theaters in Nebraska. And the smaller theater, I can't remember, was it the Kimball Theater? I can't remember what it's called.
I just know there's a Carson Theater, but that's the only one I remember. Yeah.
Well, it had this little area on the front that really looked like it was a part of the stage on the ground plans, but it ended up being more of a kind of a pit area. And so when we were setting up, we were going off of all the calculations that we had. And we had a moment where in that show where they're supposed to, the majority of the set is in a green room, but then they're supposed to be on stage. And so what we always did is we had built a rolling wagon that was basically a balcony that would roll in front of that set. And then the set was too far forward from our calculations, and we didn't have room to get that in front. And we realized that probably halfway through, reconstructing the set. And so we got, the only thing we could do is go, okay, we got everyone we could find from our company and then some of the stage. And yeah, we picked the set up and moved it back. You know, we're talking about, 12-foot 2x4 walls, that were not light, and
Yeah.
platforms and so forth, because we had like 3 different kind of step up levels and stairs. But we got it done, and
Yeah.
we got it all completed, even though we had to do that. But anyways, the student, involvement. Right after that, I had a student that said, I really want to design Beauty and the Beast, which was the musical for that year. And I was like, do it, and he did a great job. And now he's a tech director, professional tech director in Austin, at the Zach Theater. He's
Okay.
the TD at the Zach
Yeah.
Theater in Austin now. So yeah, so I guess it's is organization and really involving the kids as much as possible in every
Yeah.
aspect, not just the building of it.
And knowing where the pit is. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I was like, no, this is not what it looked like on the drawing. They're like, that's the way it is. I was like, okay, boom, let's move back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't remember who it was. Gosh, I can't remember who was being the stage manager for that show, but he laughed at me hard.
Yeah.
I was like, that's okay. I mean,
I probably had
we
more.
problem solve.
I have more similar stories related to that as a touring lighting designer. When you walk into a space and you look up and you see this is not at all what they had told me this space looked like. So just got to improvise.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I understand that. What is something that what is a non-theater fact about you that is a what's the word? My brain just went old man on me. A guilty pleasure of Gary Cooper's that has nothing to do with theater.
Sports.
Okay.
I'm a huge sports fan.
Always
I've
have
always,
been.
I mean,
Yeah.
if I hadn't gone into theater, I had scholarships to play, football when I was in high school.
What did you play?
And so I've always been, I played outside linebacker and tight end.
Okay.
And so, of course, small town.
Right.
We play both sides, not like
Yeah.
6A where you either offense or defense. So yeah, I've just always been a huge sports fan. It's been unfortunate with the Texans this year.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge Astros fan, and hopefully we will have a majority of our players coming back.
Yeah.
And
Remains to be seen.
and have yeah, it's up in the air right now. We need Springer back.
The good news. The
But
good news
yeah,
is Blake Snell is now out of the AL, so he's moved on to the NL. So that's good for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's my guilty pleasure. The other thing is just, being involved in whatever my kids do.
Okay.
My son is an aspiring Olympic trial swimmer.
Okay.
And so he's about a second and a half off of his Olympic trial cut. And
Wow.
so we go to a lot of things and a lot of his meets, and he's in college now, but he's supposed to be going to school in New Jersey and swim for them.
Right.
But New Jersey's basically locked down. So
Yeah.
he's been doing online classes, and the fact that he can still swim down here and compete. So he's been doing all online classes.
Yeah.
And living at home. So I guess we save some money not having to pay for room and board up
Right.
there. But it allowed him the opportunity to swim in the US Open this semester and things like that.
That's
and then,
cool.
And then my daughter, who's a freshman at SAM, she's a musical theater major, and so we do a lot of things associated with her,
Oh,
whatever show she's currently in. And she's been in shows since she was 4, basically, just always around theater. So
Do you and Eric Marsh have a healthy rivalry?
Maybe.
I just because you both are always at the recruiting tables, so I don't know if there's like this recruiting
Yeah.
softball, but yeah,
I think the funny thing about recruiting is that there are certain people you never get to talk to because either their table's too far away
Yeah.
from you or they just are into their own world. But a lot of us become really good
yeah,
friends, and talk to each other and look forward to those major events where we can come together
Yeah.
and I don't know, even though we're competing for the same students, especially on the tech side, because there's so few and
Right.
we all want, the technicians. It's more friendly than a rivalry.
Right, sure. Yeah, I meant that kind of tongue in cheek, but yeah,
Yeah.
so that's funny. That's good that she's at SAM. I my wife graduated from SAM from the musical theater program, and uh I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but not much has changed. That was, that was 16 years ago, but I think they found their formula and kind of ran with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed with them. I didn't know a lot about the
Yeah.
program other than, a couple of people that had had success coming out of there. And then, what was interesting is a lot of the shows that we see during the summer, we'll, look through the bios and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
Sam graduate in the
Yep.
Houston area. So and the musicals that we go and see. And she had a lot of offers at other universities, that had musical theater programs that were well thought of, but she it just fit for her. She just liked the
Right.
feeling of it. And she said that, since then, this semester, she goes, I'm with my people.
Yeah.
These are my people.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I've been questioning her a lot. What are you learning in this class, in this class, in this class? Because I'm just interested. And
Yeah.
she goes, and we go into these long conversations about what she's learning, and it sounds like she's, getting a lot of good instructions.
Yeah,
So that's good. I'm glad.
They have good people there.
You told me immediately, Dad, I'm not going to even audition for your school because you don't do musicals. And I go, oh, yeah, I know. I understand.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she could have
I
changed
know
that.
you're a musical kid. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't blame me.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get you out of here on this question. I sometimes I ask advice, and sometimes I ask sort of ridiculous kind of fun questions. For you, I'm gonna go with ridiculous fun question, mostly out of
All right.
selfish interests. And again, you may not be. Well, I mean, politically, you could answer this. You may not be able to answer this. But who is the greatest Astro of all time?
Oh man,
It's
I'm
a
gonna
tough
say
one.
Altuve.
Altuve.
Altuve is my favorite. I mean, he's a fan favorite, obviously, but the stuff that he's overcome to be as good as he is
Sure.
and consistent as he is, and the way, I mean, Bagwell was a great hitter, and
With some help.
we've
Yeah.
had some amazing pitchers,
Yeah.
but just the way he has conducted himself and the way the guy can hit, no matter where the ball is thrown. I've never seen a hitter like him that it can be so far out of the strike zone and he still puts a bat on the ball
Yeah.
and puts it in play. Is just amazing to me. Now he needs to learn when to try to steal, because I think he should not be stealing as
Right.
much as he does, because he's not really great at that.
Right.
But gosh, as a player, I really respect him.
So I got to ask.
And there's a lot.
Yeah, I got to ask
Yeah.
a follow up then, because you mentioned the word pitcher. Is there an all-time Astros pitcher, and only Astros? And I say that because, obviously we've had Nolan Ryan, we've had Randy Johnson, Mike Scott, we've had some great, great, great pitchers on the team,
Mhm.
but are they Astros?
Yeah, because they don't stay
Yeah,
forever in our organization. I know, because in Verlander right now, spending most of his career.
I mean,
Detroit and
Clemens,
then coming over
Pettit,
here.
all these
Yeah.
guys. But would you
I
label them
consider
Astros?
those guys. I consider those guys, like the Randy Johnson and even Clemens and Pettit, are almost like rentals,
Right,
more than Astros to me.
I think Mike Scott may be the closest thing to an Astro.
I liked him, Randy wait, am I saying it right? Oswald? Randy?
Roy Oswalt.
Roy.
Yeah.
I was like, it's an
Yeah,
R.
that's a good
Roy
one. Yeah,
was a really good picture that when I first started watching the
Yeah.
Astros, because I'm not a Houstonian.
Yeah.
I've now been here for 20 years, so I guess I call myself
Yeah.
Houstonian now. But I really grew up in the Dallas area,
Right.
so it was the Rangers that I unfortunately watched, because they were
Yeah.
bad all
then-
the time, and the entire time I grew up.
80s and 90s, they were not very good.
Yeah, they were so bad. And but the Cowboys were good back then. So, and now
Yeah.
I can't be a Cowboys fan anymore because my Houston people get mad at me.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, when we first moved here, Roy was, you know, pretty dominant pitcher
Right.
back then, and I just liked, you know, the way he pitched.
Well, he's
So,
fast.
yeah,
And those baseball games, you know,
yeah,
they were 90 minutes when he pitched.
yeah,
So,
yeah. He
well,
didn't mess around, man. He was all business.
no, he
Yeah.
got the ball, he threw it.
Minor wisdom.